Season 4, episode 3. Welcome.
Oh, sorry, I missed it. I thought we were gonna say season. Okay,
I just did it. We clapped, remember?
say welcome again. Two.
What? The Energy and Heart podcast.
Hosted by
Jiggy
and Steph.
God.
Okay, so I know we've been doom and gloom about our business and our lives, but I feel like there's some really cool things happening. So
Some cool things have happened.
Yeah.
Yes.
let's chat
We're
about
not just
that.
some sad losers who just talk about the CEOs and just call it a day.
That's so season 3, honestly.
That's so season 3, guys. Come on, catch up.
So
I want to ask you how you be doing, because if you live under a rock or something, as they say, Steph and Norman, representing RBTL, have been featured, guested on
guessed it.
ABG, and it does not stand for Asian Baby Girl. It's Asian Boss Girl. Norman too is a queen, you know? So it is what it is, but that's a huge freaking deal. Huge platform.
Yes.
Do you want to share like how that all started, or do you want to
Yeah,
just focus
I
on what
can-
the experience was like?
Yeah, I can get into it. I'll keep it really quick. So like,
Take your time.
so we got featured in Asian Boss Girls podcast very recently, and it was super cool. This has been in the making actually for a while. I think late last year I was just thinking like, oh, which places would I want to be featured in? Would be really cool to talk about RBTL, and ABG was definitely one of them. Um, I'm not gonna get into the details of like how we got in contact, but we got in contact, and I spoke with Janet earlier in the year, and then we were game to do the podcast. So we recorded in May, and then it just came out in June. So all this happened actually in between the last season and this season, and I think it's really cool, obviously, that the episode has come out, but I think what I want to dive into or share a little bit more about is actually the sort of behind the scenes process of preparing for the podcast. I've been told that we sound pretty good in it, and which makes me really happy, because that's not what I felt like preparing for it. And I think, I've said this before, I feel like a lot of people, once you're recorded, once your content is out there, it's polished, it looks good, but we don't get to see what happens before in the preparation process. So I think this podcast in particular was very significant, I think, for me and Norman, but especially in my personal story. I think it's significant because it's one thing to put yourself out there in your own account, right, and share your story, right? It's another thing when it's on somebody else's platform and it's reaching people you've never talked to before, never seen, and so that, I think, created this pressure that I was feeling to just like be perfect at this podcast. And I think there were pressures of like, oh shoot, it's being seen by a whole new audience of people. This is like the first time actually that RBTL, as a whole, has been featured on a podcast, like Norman and I. And not only that, this is the first time I'm speaking on the story of RBTL and how it came together. And so I think there was a lot of pressure to get it right, to actually honor my story, be able to honor Norman's story, be able to honor RBTL's story, and to do it all within that one recording. And so because of that, if you've been following along, you all know that I don't feel comfortable speaking. It's not my forte. It's something that's new to me, something that I think I'm actually getting better at because of this podcast. But because of that, this was the type of project that made me want to throw up. And so like for those of you who are like, oh my god, like, you know, there are scary things in your life that you want to do, like, yeah, like we all experience those things. And I think with this one, I literally was so scared. There was a point in this process that I was like, okay, maybe I just won't be on the podcast and Norman will just do it. And that is that, you know. And so there's almost this like, let me just find every way I can escape this scary thing that I don't want to do. And it's extra terrifying also because I'm not comfortable with being seen. And so you know, I was overcoming that. It was overcoming the pressure of feeling like I had to get this right. And this particular project, there's a lot of things that I'm able to jump into without a lot of prep, but this is one of those things that I've never prepped so much in my life for. So it's been a while since I felt that way.
That's a lot of prepping.
Yeah, it was a lot of prepping. We had to go through how to tell each story properly, basically. And I think the biggest thing for me was that part of this story has to honor my past like ventures.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part that was really scary for me because it's like it was a mixed bag experience, you know, really good for so many reasons and really hard for so many reasons. And I just wanted to do it in an honorable way. Like I wanted to, like, when I look back at my past venture and my first startup and my first try at entrepreneurship, there are a lot of things that I think I was not necessarily proud of in that experience. And also it was really hard for reasons that, you know, have to do with somebody that's like somebody else that's not me, and things that were like really out of my control. And so I haven't looked at that experience very fondly. And so I realized in the process of preparing for this experience, I think there was a lot of remembering that experience was not solely a hard experience. There was actually a lot of really positive things that came from it and a lot of growth in that. And there's a way to share the good and to honor that experience while simultaneously making space for where that's taken me since. And so this project and this podcast episode was not just like, hey, it's a podcast talking about RBTL, because it really wasn't. I think it was just it was also a meaningful milestone to finally solidify and cement the experiences that I've had and to finally tell the story from me and to tell it in a way that gave credit where credit was due and gave myself credit for what I was able to actually do and accomplish and the impact I was able to have there. And that's something that I haven't done publicly in a really long time or ever. So yeah, that's why it's very significant. It wasn't just a podcast. It was actually significant personally on a lot of different levels. And that was it.
Yeah, I think, like, first of all, I loved the podcast episode in a sense that it wasn't just talking about RBTL. It wasn't just talking about the program and what is the program, but it was also honoring you, honoring Norman and the story behind you two's journey individually, and also how you came together. Like, you also talked about how we all met. The first time that we all met Norman, and it was like, oh, he had this card game and we met up and in SF, and you know, it just like came to be what it is today. And they had some really great questions too. I really loved a lot of the questions that they asked you, and they also asked about like communication skills and all of that stuff. But I remember watching it and texting you. You even like talked about you and Kato and like you two's relationship, and I was like, oh my god, surprise number one. But then surprise number two, you mentioned your previous business, and I just remember like how hard it once was for you to even talk about it, because at the end of the day, it's like talking about it was like a grieving process for you, and there was the sadness, the frustrations too, and all of the emotions. And so when you talked about it, you even said the company's name. I was like, what? Wow. Even I was like, am I shocked or triggered? Like, what is it? But I was like, whoa. I'm like, I texted you and I was like, I'm really surprised that you talked about it. And you said that, like it's time for then Steph's to kind of get the honor, be acknowledged, be celebrated for everything that she was able to accomplish through that time. Because yeah, the things that you were able to accomplish at that time weren't small.
No.
They were gigantic. You threw an entire gala too.
Yes.
And like that, those things shouldn't have been hidden. And you were right. Like it really does deserve to be celebrated. And I'm so happy for you and glad and proud of you that you did give that shine to then Steph. And also like you did it in a way that wasn't disrespectful to the formal business partner. At the end of the day, like as painful as that experience may have been, I also remember the joy that it brought you and the friendship that it brought you. And I think that the way that you talked about it in the podcast, it's also really important because that platform ain't a small platform. That ABG platform, they got the people who they got mad people on there. And so I think like for you to be able to honor then Steph and also the former business partner, like I commend you for the mindfulness, the intention, the energy that you've put into like and the time that you've put into really so delicately but honorably deliver that story. You didn't drag anybody.
No.
Like not even yourself. Like you
Yeah.
were just like, yo, you did the thing and now it's become who you are now. And Norman too. Like Norman has his own brilliance as well. And I'm so happy that the podcast episode wasn't just about like the program. It was like what it took you to as individuals and then what it took you to as a unit and what it took us as a team. And I remember watching it and I was like, oh man, I remember like 2020 when Steph and the former business partner were going through their breakup. Her birthday comes up. It's her birthday. She gets trashed.
Yep.
She's hanging out over the toilet. She's like, so we're going to build something together or what? To now, Asian boss girl, and there's more to come.
Yeah.
That was dope.
Thank you.
I think like you going through that, like I want to celebrate that, but me as a friend watching it all happen. Yeah. These things, guys, like they don't just happen overnight as people say. But some things just take just years. And it's not even just like the amount of time that Steph and Norman put into RBTL. It's also everything before they even met that they've had to go through to come to this point. And for everything that we're going through now to get to the point that we're going.
Becoming.
Becoming.
Constantly evolving.
Constantly evolving. Yeah, that was dope. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, shout outs to the ABG team because I think they did an incredible job prepping for
that too.
They really
y'all
did.
need
Like,
to stop asking us like to be a guest on our podcast. What makes you think that we're just gonna have a guest on our podcast and just ask you a bunch of questions? What makes you think that we're not gonna want to prep and do our due diligence to look you up and know your story first to ask you aligning questions? What makes you think that we have the bandwidth to do all that right now? Stop it.
Yeah.
Give us some space. We're still building. God.
They did a really incredible job prepping for the podcast, and like we couldn't have been able to tell the story the way that we did without their support and their prep. And so yeah, kudos to the ABG team because they truly they did an incredible job prepping for it. And I think, you know, working with a lot of, you know, with multiple different creators over the years, like it was really great to just see them like embody what I would hope like a lot of people would, to take intentional time to do that. So very much appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a team effort.
Yeah.
It's like truly a collaboration.
Yeah.
To be able to put something out like that, and like just also being a viewer of the podcast and like seeing like how they've changed and developed over the years. I'm just like, wow, like it's really cool to actually be kind of in the process with them and to confirm that, yeah, like they do a really good job and they do take care of you. Yeah.
There's just such a big difference when the product and the service is great or whatever, but like the experience
Of collaborating.
Listen, you can make a great product all you want to, but if customer service is crap, like,
it makes it really hard to work.
The experience, the whole package really matters from beginning to end. Yeah. Sick. Is that the episode?
Well, I wanted to know if there were cool things that like you just told me right before, like.
Okay, so on the theme of ABG. What?
Okay, no, keep going.
Oh, that. Oh.
Yeah, no. This is on the theme of cool things happening in like our world.
Theme of cool things happening.
Yeah.
I think I'm still like fathoming what had happened, but I truly feel like I'm a rapper. When people like get lyrics tattooed on them,
Yeah.
I'm living out the rapper dream that little Jiggy never really got to live out. But basically, long story short, what happened was there is a person out there in the world now who has quoted me like tattooed on their body.
Dude.
So this person who has been following me for a while now and has been honestly big, like one of my biggest fans basically. She got the back of the Vulnerability is Dope both and all t-shirt. There's a whole quote on the back of the t-shirt, and she got that tattooed, the whole thing tattooed on her leg. I said, girl, why don't you just buy the t-shirt? But yeah, she said that was her birthday gift to herself.
Wow.
She had there was a period of time this year where when I hadn't heard from her, to a point where I was like actually kind of getting worried, because I was like, okay, I understand that she's like a follower that I never met, but she used to be so consistent in her communication with me that once she stops, it's kind of worrisome. And it turns out that she was just going through a really hard time with her mental health. And as she's going through her like embodiment exploration journey of life, she said that that's kind of the quote that really helped her through that time. And so for her birthday, she decided to get it tattooed. It took her 2 sessions. She sent me videos. She sent me pictures. But yeah, that whole thing is tattooed on her leg. It is covering her whole leg. And
wow.
That seems like a big responsibility on my part, but at the same time, it's her choice. It's her decision. I didn't tell her to do it. She chose to do it. And if it's like really resonating with her to that point, good on you. I'm glad it was helpful. That's all I can say. But I think that this also correlates to like what I always say about, if you're a speaker, if you're a coach, if you want to call yourself a so-called influencer, everything that you say has to be attached with some sort of level of responsibility, because you never know who's going to get it tattooed. And if your theory is incorrect, if it turns out that what you have once quoted does not align with your heart, your integrity, you are... What's another word? I don't curse anymore.
You're screwed.
You're screwed. Yes. Thank you. You're screwed. You got to watch what you say. There's always going to be responsibility, ownership. And you know what? Am I scared that somebody has something I said tattooed on them? Am I scared? Because what if somebody comes along and like challenges that? Am I scared? No. Bring it on. Do I feel as though she wasted her money? No. Because I so believe in that message too. that is the degree of belief that you have to have in yourself and your values if you want to call yourself a speaker, a coach, an influencer, whatever. You can't just say whatever you want to say. Somebody has me tattooed on. That's crazy.
I mean, I just have to say that, like, that's just
wear the shirt, man. That's a lot of
no,
pressure.
no. I really like no. You should like really fully receive it. Like, somebody really felt so moved. It had to have changed their life in some way for a person to choose permanent art, like, on their body. That's the level of impact that you have. Like, I see it that way.
Yeah.
And I think not everyone I think not everyone is as thoughtful and careful as you are about what they put out there.
Yeah.
When they should.
Yo, I'm no longer gonna be like, oh my god, who's gonna buy this t-shirt? Oh my god, who's gonna book me for a speaking gig? Dude. It's like, what? Somebody has me tattooed.
Yeah.
What am I over here like, oh, my book, who's gonna buy it? Somebody has me tattooed.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear it.
Your words have weight.
Yeah.
They make a big impact.
Yeah. What an odd concept. But here we are.
It's not surprising to the rest of us. It's not surprising to me.
It's a weird thought, though.
I know. I mean, you being the creator, I'm sure. Yeah. But, like, for me, I'm just like, it was bound to happen. Like,
number one.
Yeah.
There's gonna be more.
Yeah. Like, this is just the beginning. Like, it was bound to happen that someone was gonna do that. You know. Like, it's not a surprise to me as an outsider watching you, and how your energy impacts people in the world.
Okay, well, that's like my cool news. So, and that's the podcast. But I think there were some like lessons here.
Yeah, I think like when I think about like what's coming from yours, is just like, you just never know who is going to see and who's going to be touched by like what you have to share. You know, so I think for people who are listening, it's just like, you know, your story, your experience, it matters, and it matters to share it, because you just never know.
The one episode I'm not wearing vulnerability is dope t-shirt, but like that's the kind of the message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think from mine, I it's just do the thing that's gonna make you feel like you're gonna throw up, or like maybe not like that, but like if you are scared, and if you're scared but it is important to you, like go for it. Just like make sure you have time and space to actually put intentional effort into the things that matter to you.
Yeah. And be proud of yourself, even if a past experience is painful. Kind of still give yourself, like, you are so deserving of celebrating all versions of you. And even if that's a sticker too, but even if it's painful, you know, like, be proud of what you were able to serve. And even if maybe it wasn't celebrated then, it's never too late to celebrate now. Yeah. So
those are good gems.
This was a good episode. What are we talking about? Duh.
Okay. Well, thank you for listening, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Bye.